like as soon as I started learning to use the keybinds with letters for Diablo 2, I actually went out of my way to think of a general 7 keys that can play all classes except summoning builds, because summoning builds take an additional amount of different keys to do more summoning, such as, like if you add in revive, if you add in skeletal mages back in the day when it was the before the fishy mancer slash 2020, back in the 2020 days, um you had skeletal mages as well on top of it, right? So you have more keybinds to do for summoning builds anyway. So when I learned about key binding letters, I like I worked out the non PvP or like the PvE general 7 keys that can play almost any class without like thinking to warm up. Well, you kind of warm up in a way, but you don't warm up in a way that you remap your mind about one or two different skills. So I have the 7 keys where it's like ERDFGHV for any class, where I can just play straight out the gate. If I'm geared, I can play straight out any of those automatically because I categorize the ERDFGHV thing for any of the classes. So for me, when I play Diablo 3 and I talk about your keybinds as well and the rhythm and whatnot, I actually categorize each button for its certain purpose as well. And so while this build happens to have a rhythm, some builds go back to the older way of categorizing your keybinds such that, for example, number 2 might be your longest cooldown. Number 1 or whatever might be something else. And then number 3 and 4, because your index finger is like the fastest reaction finger, so normally your mobility should be on your fastest reaction finger, whichever finger it is. In real life, whichever finger you have the fastest APM, your mobility or your damage button, whether it's damage skill, like for a build that has a damage skill, should be on your index finger more or less, which is why most right-handed people or all right-handed people play the left click is like the general DPS thing, which is why Wave of Light, for example, is on the left click. Even though Wave of Light is not the lightning pillar, it's the fire rune, and still Wave of Light, most people play on the left click. Some play on the right click, but most people play on the left click. But I used to not play Wave of Light. Well, not even the word used to. I don't actually play Wave of Light on the left click. I play Wave of Light as my number 3 key. I'm left-handed in real life, but I use right-handed mouse. But what I'm getting at is that because index finger is your fastest one, so my Wave of Light is number 3. My mobility is number 4, which is a dashing. So when I'm dashing, when I'm dodging, I'm not dealing damage. So, but I'm reacting as fast as I can between both my attack and my damage. So I react in mobility and then deal my damage in return as fast as I can because it's still my fastest finger in terms of APM. So I have a lot of like this intricacies to making this game more than just a relaxing game. And that's why I'm so long-winded. But I make this game like, like make it in depth, not in terms of numbers of Paragon efficiency wise, but I make it to a foundational level. And the shortest word for it is the complacency thing that earlier that I talked about. So it's like you don't want to be complacent just because it speeds or something. You want to make sure that your keybinds are naturally built into your muscle memory for anything that you're doing. So when it comes to muscle memory, it actually helps when you do your pushes, because then you're like more focused on something else that is actually difficult, right? Whether it's, dodging an affix or something. Because, for example, even though strafe impale, you don't really have to manually impale, right? I mean, you definitely want to manually impale while strafing, right? But a lot of people actually like have this like mindset as to like, well, if the build already cast impale, if the seasonal theme is casting impales for you, most of the, like, in general sense, without talking about like sneaking in damage or like knowing the mechanics, right? Just for the sake of like, like build wise, when you're given such like the auto fire ring, it comes to mind between like talking about like Counter Strike, where like you spray and pray, or you actually bother going deeper than spray and pray, right? And so the auto firing versus manually impaling is that at the end of the day, do you really want to press your keyboard or your mouse, whether you're using the side buttons, the side numbers, right? In addition to strafing. So it comes down to your muscle memory, right? Because, you know, people, the people that don't want to do the manual impales have been always talking about like it's between the build's idea of the auto firing versus the need to manually impale just because you are like mechanically sneaking in damage versus not doing so, right? And so you build that muscle memory, which causes that complacency issue or not. And that's where I come in, right? And all this kind of talking in town is this is where I come in, because being long-winded like this and being analytical like this is that some people just don't seem to want to play that manual impale, regardless of who's right or who's wrong, right? It's not about that. It's about the muscle memory in which you really want to play that or not. That manual impale, like sneaking in that. But if you don't naturally build that muscle memory, you won't want to play it that way. So that's the biggest problem with this auto firing. The second part of this auto firing that annoys me. Now let's talk about something that isn't so positive about myself, is that this auto firing is really annoying, because during my 141 push, or even like when you want to push like actual pushing, the problem with this auto firing is that unless you keep everything in front of you, I was facing, I was strafing and facing like my shots at the Tremor Elite pack. I even made a small highlight of it, but I guess it's not very clear either, because at the end of the day, it was like there was like bats or some other monster like kept like coming from like the bottom left of me. And so my impales were auto firing on the other monster, even though I was closer to the elite pack, the tremors. But the auto firing kept auto firing the other monster, right? And of course, we can say that, oh, is the other monster like almost dying because the auto firing mechanic picks monsters with lower health and whatnot, okay, fine. Let's not talk about like in that sense. Let's talk about like when we wanted to fix when in the PTR initially the strafe mechanic or the strafe power did not have this auto firing thing. We had to manually face, just like when we do the manual multi shot, right? When you're mowing the lawn with multi shot, you need to face the monsters, and that was annoying. So then the PTR, there was one patch where it started helping us with the auto firing system of the strafe seasonal theme. And so with this auto firing, I'm wanting to I'm literally refacing the elite pack and almost hugging that elite pack. But then the auto firing decides to pick on some other monster. And to me that is annoying. Now, of course, we can say, well, just go kill the other thing. But that's not the point. The point is I'm hugging or close to hugging the tremors that I'm like literally facing. But the auto firing is not even picking the one that I'm hugging. So this is where all like the analytics, the being detailed oriented is like, and making the game like way too deep, you know. So, but I love like this kind of little things, and of course, I don't play perfectly by all means or anything like that. So there's what I go long-winded for. There's always a solution, like simple solution to that, which is just to kill the other thing, right? Kill the other thing first. Well, that's the same as saying, well, do you really want to play a full floor of fire shamans? Because killing full floor of fire shamans first doesn't actually net you any progress whatsoever, you know, like hardly any progress. So it still doesn't match up even if there is a very simple minded solution to that, right? So of course, in the other monster set where it's the Lacuni slashers and the maulers, and then there's like one or two stray fire shamans, yes, the best solution for my troubles is to go and kill the fire shaman first, since I find that annoying. So I should kill the fire shaman first. And in that situation, that's correct. The answer is true for that situation. But for the other mod set where your whole floor is like full of fire shamans, okay, so if it's that kind of floor, well, what season was it good for? For example, that's that particular mob set is good for like season 21, where you were trying to get like 100 stacks and get like the seasonal like meteor shower or tornado or whatever, or like green explosion or whatever. That the green meteor, whatever. I repeated myself there. But the 100 stacks, it's good to kill those fallen guys that are in that mob set, while the fire shamans are like just there. The fallen monsters are still like useful for gaining the stacks. That season, however, you can say that, oh yeah, it's you know beneficial that the full floor fire shaman is actually not that terrible. But then if we're talking about fire shaman wise, to kill them first to avoid any auto firing issues, or like kill any other monsters that are like causing some auto firing issues from the strafe power, well, not all the time. And the shadow set says you should hug, and the first enemy hit, and I want to hit the first enemy hit that I want to hit is the one that I'm like hugging or refacing, such that I don't want to be that person that says my manual impale is better than the auto firing. Then at that point, why is the auto firing thing even? It's worthless. You might as well do more manual impales, like like what you call this? when you hit your impale skill, they might as well just say like you fire like it's like burst fire, right? In Counter Strike terms or in shooter terms, you might as well cause a burst fire system, right? Versus the strafe power right now, it's just auto targeting. I call it auto firing, but like this auto targeting is not really that good, right? And so you might as well put in like burst fire mode of manual impales, meaning that if you reface what you want to kill and you can create a burst fire mode, that might be better because then you're actually inclined to manually impale stuff. But anyway, like this is just getting into the like nitty gritty of like when it comes to complacency of pushing versus like just like one shotting things and like there's no reason to manually impale. Well, you know, it's all complacency from there. So like the general word, complacency, right? Like short and sweet. Um, but yeah, like I just love like you know analyzing this not in the numbers way too much. I'm more of muscle memory and categorizing than numbers. And when I talk about numbers, I really mean like those like mathematical derivative and all those like those other things that um or like even the total toughness kind of situation.